Chapter 26, Year 889 PXF, Late Autumn. Osmond trotted around the apple trees as the trickster, his coat soaking up the late morning sun that had finally broken through the fog. Each drop of melted frost hitting the ground released a cornucopia of smells, chief among them the pungent aroma of forgotten apples left to ferment. The trickster had no doubt that where there were ripening odors, mice would never be far behind. While not as dramatic as the judge's hunting, the trickster outsmarting orchard rats and their plethora of escape routes both into the trees and under the ground offered Osmond its own form of exhilaration. Thorn assured Osmond before leaving him for his daily duties that Gwen wouldn't be taking potshots at him. She knew the benefits of a predator in the grove come fall, and all who worked the fields of Elleryan knew it as well. Rodent populations exploded every harvest, and were the far larger threat if not culled before winter. Lucky for all, with the effects of the apple wearing off and wanting to save their last one for whatever plan they hatched, Osmond had a Saldrig-sized appetite even when channeling the trickster's body. Half sunk into the trickster's instincts, Osmond found the quick and efficient hunting of the orchard's mice a balm for the chaotic disorder of his thoughts about a plan to outsmart Serena. The trickster's hunting tactics began to form a structure to the disjointed pieces of information circling in his mind. But the real breakthrough came when he encountered a rat viper stalking a fat mouse half drunk on fermented apples. So intent on its quarry and overconfident in its fangs and poison, the snake never realized it was being preyed upon until Osmond had it in his jaws and snapped its neck with a quick shake of the trickster's head. The key to success would be to lure Serena into a trap they set, not to foil hers.
A nice ginger tabby cat would be a heck of a lot more convenient to explain being in the storehouse than a fox if we got caught, Gwen said pointedly to Osmond as she stood with one hip cocked to the side and her ever-present rifle cradled under her arm. The three stood under the apple tree at the center of the orchard. A silence had hung between them until Gwen had broken the tension with her comment about Osmond becoming a farmhouse cat.
"Unfortunately, that's not how it works," Osmond explained. "Trust me, the cat I can become would be much harder to explain."
Right, the Saldrig. See, I reckon giant long-toothed cats were just a myth to keep people away from that frozen island of yours,
Gwen said, giving Osmond a nod to acknowledge his Uldani heritage.
But Thorn here assures me you two were gallivanting around in the moonlight like an imp riding a wicker hog on the drowned moon.
Gwen's straightforward, outspoken manner had won Osmond over, even when he was still in the trickster's form when she met them at the barn after darkness fell to look for apples from the central tree. To Osmond's disappointment, none of the empowered apples jumped out to the trickster's senses from the towering stacks of crates and barrels in the storage stalls. There were indeed some in the mix, but finding them would be all but impossible. It would be like looking for a diamond in the snow. Realizing a greater need to solidify a plan, Osmond had leaped onto Thorn's shoulder and nudged him to head for the orchard. Gwen seemed thoroughly unimpressed with Osmond's return to his Uldani form, only noting,
"I kinda thought you were gonna be naked."
Her tone suggested that Osmond had accrued an unpaid debt that he would owe at a future date, which made Osmond appreciate her even more. "I think we can hold off Serena for a few days, but no more before she becomes impatient. That gives us until Hearth's Rest at best," Osmond offered. "So we have 4 days, Thorn stated flatly. "We'll need to gather all the assets we have at our disposal and figure out how we can use them to our best advantage." He continued, "If the plan includes going to the keep, we can utilize Balinon's sanctuary under the ruins of the Sojourn's Rest. We'll still have to contend with the creatures inside the walls of Arnador, but with the returning stone Balinon gave me, that gets us halfway to the keep. In order to upend whatever she's planning, we will have to fool not only Serena, but her magic as well," Osmond postulated. "From my experience and the things I saw she was capable of while we were together." Osmond held his eyes on Thorn, keeping them from darting to Gwen, not knowing how much she knew of his involvement in the coup attempt. "Her magic is sight-based. Without a doubt, she will spot magical illusions and enchanted objects of any kind from leagues away.
Maybe we can use that to our advantage.
I think I have that covered, said Thorn. But retrieving Quentin and getting back out again is going to require a heck of a trick.
There's no way she's giving y'all what you want,
Gwen said, butting into the exchange.
A snake is always a snake, and she has too big a prize just to give it away if she can end up with both. Whoever she offers you in trade for that thing,
Gwen motioned with her head toward the tree.
Won't be Riken,
Gwen stated flatly.
Or Quentin, or the person you think it is,
she added, trying to cover all her bases.
You boys and your names,
she sighed with mock exasperation. The three plodded deep into the night until the fog settled in and Thorn and Gwen's teeth began to chatter. Gwen looked to Osmond, rubbing her hands together to make some warmth.
I'd invite you into the house, but there's 5 of us sharing it right now, and no matter how careful you are, if an Uldani is spotted in the main house, word will get around. You sure you can't become a tabby cat?
It's fine, Osmond offered. I need to figure a few things out about this before I change back to the trickster for the day, Osmond said. He drew the dagger, which had changed again, out from where it was tucked through his belt. The blade now glowed with a dim orange heat. Sapphires ornamented the end of the crossguard, their blue depths seeming to wink conspiratorially in the moonlight. White leather wrapped the hilt's grip, giving the totality of the weapon the coloration of the trickster's tail. Thorn looked at it for a moment before, even with all the changes, recognition hit him. Is that Talon's dagger? The one he stabbed you with at the keep? It is, Osmond answered. Osmond's eyes that had been on the dagger found Thorn's. Talon's mother gave it to me when she set me on my Cat Malorn to repay my debt for betraying Talon. For betraying you. His eyes went back to the dagger. It's changed a lot since then. We both have. Osmond caught a pained look in Thorn's eyes before he looked away. But it wasn't at the mention of the betrayal. It seemed to be more in empathy for Osmond's guilt. His voice drifted to Osmond gently. Love is a force as strong as the tides. It can change a person's life as easily as a storm reshapes the shore. When wielded as a weapon, even the foundations of who we hope we are become vulnerable to its power. Thorn laid a hand on Osmond's shoulder. I forgave you long ago, brother. It's time for you to forgive yourself. Thorn nodded in assurance before turning and walking into the darkness, following Gwen, who had drifted away during their exchange. Osmond stood alone under the apple tree, the gathering fog beginning to pool around his ankles and his breath rising like a ghost in the moonlight from the chill night air. Osmond looked past the moon and into the night. Far to the south, Yanri and Anson were searching for Quentin in Lyria Bay. He had no way to get them a message, and wasn't sure he would send one if he could. Not until Quentin was safe. At least they were far from Serena and out of harm's way. Osmond examined the dagger in his hand. The blade had changed aspects each time he channeled a different spirit he carried, reflecting the forms he took. This ornamental aspect always appeared after the trickster. Previously, Osmond had witnessed the dagger as an icy cold raw iron blade all but identical to its original form after channeling the judge, and the misty stiletto after the matriarch. He had yet to see what the dagger would become after the prince, but until necessary, he didn't want to use the resources it would take to soul channel into the prince's form while restricted to only a diet of mice. Osmond recognized the elemental pattern to the dagger's aspects, but other than their appearance, had not tested any unique enchantment each aspect might carry. Osmond tentatively touched the glowing ornamental blade, testing it for internal heat correlating to its fiery origin. However, he found it cool to the touch. Osmond even drove the dagger into a fallen dry branch to see if perhaps his target would burst into flames, but to no effect. It wasn't until, in mild frustration and recognition of its perfect balance, he threw the dagger into a nearby apple tree that he unlocked its secret. With but the thought of retrieving the dagger, the world folded around Osmond, and he was transported to the dagger's location, finding his hand firmly on the hilt. He threw the blade again, and like before, Osmond found himself where the weapon was embedded after experiencing the same disorienting translocation as the trickster's ability. Again and again, Osmond tested the dagger's range and limitations until his guts were heaving from the repeated translocations. Osmond sat on the ground to regain his balance and composure. He quickly assessed his well-being, specifically trying to determine if using the dagger had exhausted some or all of his internal reserves of life energy that empowered his soul channeling. As far as Osmond could surmise, whatever powered the dagger's ability was separate from what enabled him to change forms. The fog was getting thicker as morning approached, and Osmond spent the rest of the night trying to get more accustomed to the dizzying sensation of the trickster's dagger. Osmond drove himself through the old training Talon had drilled into him in the days with the Arnador Guard, adding translocations into the mix of maneuvers. The ever-deepening fog made for an exciting challenge, and Osmond realized that the unique power of the trickster's blade did not rely on sight, just will. It gave him an idea that he would pose to the group when they met again. Dawn brought a ruddy glow to the deep mist surrounding Osmond. It also brought a rumble to his stomach, and he felt his teeth elongating and sharpening as the keel of hunger filled him. With the keel, Osmond felt the chill of cold iron in his hand and realized he was no longer holding the trickster's ornamental dagger, but the judge's frost-covered blade. Osmond raised his free hand to his teeth, feeling their feral shape. Was his keel the connection to controlling the blade's aspect? Osmond closed his eyes and relived the moment he first saw Luminaria. The keel of awe burst from his spine as the matriarch's ghostly wings and the dagger transformed from the judge's iron blade to the matriarch's shimmering gray stiletto. Osmond's excitement at the discovery was short-lived as his stomach reasserted its demands, dispelling his awe and returning the dagger to the judge's cold iron. Osmond noted he would have to work on controlling his emotions to master the dagger's aspects, and realized he had yet to feel a keel associated with the trickster or the prince. But that would have to wait for tomorrow. The sounds of the orchard waking for the day began to drift through the fog, heralding the end of Osmond's time in his Uldani form. He channeled into the trickster and spent the next few hours greeting the rodents of the orchard by inviting them to be his breakfast. Belly full and head swimming in ideas, Osmond then spent the rest of the day napping in sunbeams on the low roof above the barrel storage shed attached to the cidery.